what we've been doing for the past 2 years, what I ran on, what we're doing, what we've accomplished, and then I'm just going to open up for questions. Sound good?
Yes.
Well, it's great to be with you. It's a fantastic night. This place is beautiful. This neighborhood. What a great turnout. So let me first say that you heard the background. One of the things that I think that little spider right there. One of the things that wasn't mentioned, I think is important, is that I was raised by a single mother. Now, I didn't start off in terms of good behavior, and if you see the recent commercials, you think I'm always had bad behavior. But when I could get in trouble because my mother was working in the hospital and she was always working overtime, and I got in trouble. I remember being on a farm. I worked on a farm when I was 11, and I leave the little lunchroom, and a guy pulls up in a black car in a black suit, and he gets out and he says, "Are you Scott Taylor?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, son, you're coming with me." And next thing I knew, we were basically at the police station. I was being charged with malicious destruction of property and breaking and entering. So my mother knew she had to do something, because you can imagine how proud she was that her 12-year-old was on probation. So she signed me up for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. How many of you guys know what that is? The mentorship program. And I will tell you that, so that's my claim to fame to Congress. I'm the first little brother elected to Congress. So that man changed the trajectory of my life. Not only did he teach me, everything from having a napkin in my lap at the dinner table with stock options, but he also instilled self-worth and self-confidence so I could leave that small town and with no money and no grades, and we grew up working poor to join the Navy and become a SEAL and reach my dreams. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today, and you wouldn't be speaking to me. So now back to Congress. So when I first got elected, actually it was right before we got elected, I met with the Speaker of the House. And he asked me, he said, "Well, what committees would you like to be on?" I imagine you want to be on House Armed Services because of your background, because of your district. And I said, "No, sir, I would like to be on Appropriations." For which he looked at me really quickly and he said, "No, not going to happen. Freshmen aren't on Appropriations. Not going to happen." And why is Appropriations important for us? So 43-ish% of our economy is direct federal spending in this area. So it's important that Virginia have a seat at the table, and certainly Hampton Roads. And Frank Wolf, I think, was the last one he left, a congressman from Northern Virginia, who was on Appropriations. So then we spent the next 4 months, and there's a steering committee, and leadership has a weighted vote, so if he really didn't want me to be there, he could have stopped it from happening. There's a steering committee of 17 who put people on committees. So we lobbied them for 4 months. I met with each and every single one of them, and the anticipated chairman of Appropriations, and I'm on Appropriations. I'm a little stubborn. So we worked it hard, we got on there. I served on the subcommittee of military construction, Veterans Affairs, meaning we oversee their budgets, Homeland, which is border security, ICE, TSA, Coast Guard. Obviously very important committees for this area. We're on track, should we get reelected, should the Republicans retain, or even potentially the Democrats take over to be on defense appropriations. So what defense appropriations is half of discretionary spending of the United States. And probably the most important subcommittee in all of Congress for this area. There's no question about it. The 3 things that I ran on, that I really focused most of my energy, although there's been some things that I've worked on that were outside of these parameters that I'm going to speak about, was having a stronger military, was getting back to what's called regular order, I'll go into that in a second, and sequestration, taking care of our veterans, which is the second one, and then the third one was economy. Doing things to help set, because in my opinion, government, you get out of the way, you set the conditions for businesses to thrive. So the first one on the military. We know we had sequestration, and what was that? Sequestration was just basically these across-the-board cuts, and this is important for everyone in this room, of course, because it affects our economy, and some of you directly. Some of you indirectly, some of you directly. So these across-the-board cuts on the military, that they would come to Congress, and they were mandated to make cuts. And so the Army would come to Congress and they'd say, "I'm the Army, I spend $500 million in empty buildings every year." And then those congressmen and women who say they support the troops say, no, you can't cut that because that's in my district, the buildings. And then you have maybe the Air Force would come and say, "Here's $1 billion program that we can cut because it doesn't fight today's wars or tomorrow's wars, it fights yesterday's wars." And then those congressmen and women would say, no, you can't cut that because those supply chains are in my district. So then what happens? The military still by law has to cut. You know this very well. So maintenance, readiness, training, all that stuff suffers. When you have maintenance, when you defer ship maintenance, for example, obviously it hurts our economy, our industrial base, we lose skilled workers and all those things, all those indirect effects when you have that. It also costs the taxpayer a lot more money It has a cascading negative effect on the industrial base, on the skilled worker base, and on deployment schedules, which are extended, which not only hurts the sailor and soldier, it hurts our families, the backbone of our military. So that had to go. You also had what's called continuing resolutions. And this year, for the first time in 20 years, now bear with me because I know this is a very low bar. For the first time in 20 years, Congress passed the authorization and the appropriation for the military on time. Sounds like a low bar, doesn't it? But it's the first time in over 20 years it happened. And when it doesn't happen, you have these things called continuing resolutions, which cumulatively are devastating for maintenance and training and readiness because you can't plan the spending for multi-year projects. It's devastating. We have to get back to regular order. From day one, myself, other veterans, freshman members were really advocates for doing that. And this year, for the first time in 22, I think it's 22 years, 20 or 22, I got my tracker back there, so don't hold me to the number, 2022. We did it. We have it passed. That's extremely important, not just for this area, but for our nation's national security apparatus. So we're rebuilding the military. There's no question. But we have more to do. We have to, we have to adjust to artificial intelligence and machine learning and these things that are coming down the line to be able to fight the next wars if necessary. Hopefully never, but if necessary. Now on the veterans front, one of the first meetings I had was at the Hampton VA, and there are great people that work at the Hampton VA that do great things every single day, no question about it. But they were also performing at a 1-star level out of a 5-star level. This area has more veterans and military than any district in the nation. We have the fastest growing veteran population, female veterans, Iraq veterans, Afghanistan veterans. In the next decade, we'll have 40% more people falling into veteran care, 60% more demand. 63% of the veterans who use the Hampton facility are from the South Side. So our office, we realized in our first meeting that there was an outpatient center that was supposed to be built on the South Side that was authorized by Congress, but no one was championing it. And as you can imagine, when you see things like that, you're always thinking to yourself, well, surely somebody must be doing that. No, there's a diffusion of responsibility. People are busy. They're not doing things. So we champion that. We've had the decision maker in our office like 7 times over the past year and a half. It's going to get built on the South Side. What's going to happen in the next few months, you're going to see the GSA, they're going to announce that competition. Because we've been pushing and pushing and pushing them and pressuring them to get it done. Virginia Beach and Chesapeake will probably compete for it. I don't know who's going to get it. Virginia Beach is in my district. I'm a little bit partial. But the first thing is I just wanted to get it done. They'll compete. We'll get that thing done. What we've also done for veterans, I'm proud to tell you that less than 2% of bills make it into law. Less than 2% of bills that are introduced become law. Legislation is tough. It's not like in the Virginia House of Delegates, I passed like 10 laws there. It's tough. You have to shepherd the process all the way through the House and the Senate if you want to make it happen. So we passed a law that holds senior executives at the VA accountable. And we passed that into law. The President signed it earlier this year. So we're doing things for veterans. We work on veterans issues every single day individually, as well as trying to get, for example, that 100% of people from the DOD are, 100% of people from the VA are in the DOD, right? But there's computer systems that talk. So the DOD was like commercial, off-the-shelf stuff. VA spent billions of dollars building on their MS-DOS-based system. You guys remember floppy disks? Go find a floppy disk. Right? That had to stop. So we pushed them to change that, and they're working on that. I was really happy with Secretary Shulkin. I wasn't really happy when he left. That was something I disagreed with the President on, because I think he was a hard charger and doing a good job. So we're constantly working things on the VA. There's much, much more. I don't have enough time to tell you about all the things. Obviously, on the economy's doing very well. I was just at the State of the Region, and our economy here is doing fantastic. We have more jobs available than people looking for jobs. If you want a job, you can find one. But we have a problem with skilled labor force. So I'm not a politician who just talks about stuff, and I'm going to get to like sea level rise and all this stuff in a second. I like to do things. I like to get things done. And I will tell you that, number one, every single bill that I've introduced, every one, has a Democrat co-sponsor. Every one. Because I think it's important to work together. I know there are a lot of people who are married in here. Go try to see if you get 100% of what you want from your spouse for the next 3 weeks and see how it works out. It doesn't, right? I think it's important that people work together. And I don't really care who's with me or who gets the credit if we get something done. We can argue about the stuff we disagree with in the end. So every bill that I've introduced has a Democrat co-sponsor. It's harder on some of them than others, but we've been able to get it done. I also will tell you, and I'm going to get to that workforce development development thing in a second, the Chesapeake Bay and also in a second. I think it's also important to understand that in my office, on one hand, I'm a congressman. I can make a phone call, people will answer. I can shine light on things, I can apply pressure to things. On the other hand, I'm one of 435. So it's hard to get anything done, right? Everybody has their own interests and stuff like that. So what you have to do is figure out the parameters and the power and the impact of your office and how you can be impactful for every single problem set. And it's different with each one. But I like to solve problems, so I like doing it. I like figuring it out. When we looked at the skilled labor force, so when our economy's booming here, but we were cannibalizing skilled workers. The shipyards are booming right now. Machinists, welders, it's really difficult to get, right? So what can we do at our level? One of the things that we looked at the Pell Grant system. So as I told you, I grew up working poor. If I didn't go in the military, I would have been eligible for a Pell Grant, right? A hand up. But the Pell Grant system pushes people to 2- and 4-year degrees because there's a duration requirement. Now that's fine, but if you want to use that hand up to get a machinist certificate and get in the workforce, you can't do it because of the duration requirement. So we introduced a bill that keeps the accountability in the Pell Grant system, but allows flexibility for people to use those Pell Grants to be able to get a skill so they get the workforce and they go back to school later on or something. The second thing we're doing with the skilled labor force is we're working on creating a grant right now that's sustainable. That every state knows their industries, they know what they need, you know, where they need people. Obviously for us there's a lot of, you know, plumbers and welders and machinists and coders and stuff like that. This grant system would basically say, if you wanted to be a machinist, you want to get in the job, you want to get trained. Let's say it costs $2,000 to train you for the first certificate. You pay $200, so you have skin in the game. And then the grant would pay the rest of it. And then once you get hired, the participating company would, after your 6-month mark, would pay back the $2,000. Therefore, having a sustainable grant. And we're working on that now. A couple things I want to touch on before I stop rambling and answer your questions. Number one, Social Security, Medicare. There's all kinds of crazy commercials like I'm going to steal that. That's crap. It's 100% crap. I'm actually on co-sponsoring a bill to create a lockbox for Social Security, for Medicare, because it's our money. It's our money, right? I started paying Social Security at 11. So it's our money. What I do think, however, because they're clearly unsustainable, and when you look at debt and deficits, everyone in Washington, Republican and Democrat, they all know the fastest growing piece of that are entitlements, 100%. So I don't think anything's going to happen anytime soon with it, but you have to look at little small tweaks in eligibility and things like that. In my generation, this is for my tracker, so that he can't get me on TV saying, you know, throwing Granny off the ledge. So it is my generation that will have to lead on this, period. We know we're living longer, we have to look at different eligibility tweaks over time, small tweaks over time to change the trajectory. And I'm willing to lead and take a tough vote on that, if necessary. I don't know what it looks like yet, I'm going to pretend to have all the answers. But no one's touching, no one's trying to touch. I've never voted for hurting Social Security or Medicare. In fact, it was the other side that took money from Medicare. The other thing is Chesapeake Bay. So the president, as you know, zeroed out, or as many of you know, he zeroed out the monies to clean the Chesapeake Bay. Well, I don't agree with that. I grew up on the shore, working at a crab restaurant, on a farm. I know how important it is to us here, the Chesapeake Bay, not just for economic vitality, but for us to enjoy for generations to come. So myself, and then now everybody in Virginia, of course they're going to sign on to the letter or something like that. But again, remember that how can you be effective? Signing a letter is okay, and it can be effective sometimes. It wasn't going to do anything in this case. I worked with Congressman Dutch Rubbersberger, who's a Democrat from Maryland, and we got that money restored on the House side. We went to the chairman, this is a priority of ours, we want to get it done, and we were able to get it done. So that money came back here. We're proud of that. We're definitely proud of that. I want to talk two things, just two more bills, and then I'm going to stop. Sea level rise, flooding, right? Is that an issue here? Anybody think it's an issue here? Of course it is, right? So what do we do? What do we do about it? And you hear all kinds of politics, all kinds of politics. I don't want to do that. I want to get things done. I want to actually help. One of the first things we did was look at the bases, which are susceptible, right? That's my wheelhouse, is to try to gain federal assets here, try to get money here, try to protect our 8 major military installations that are in our district. So on the bases, they could spend money for resilience. Off the bases, they couldn't. So think about access roads, getting soldiers and sailors to and from the base. If you can't get soldiers and sailors to and from the base, you're not going to have a base for very long. We put language in that passed that now enables DOD to work with localities to spend money on resilience on access roads off that. That's very important for our area to protect our bases and keep them BRAC-proof if BRAC comes, right? The second thing we did was we worked with ODU and William & Mary to try to help designate centers of excellency in flooding and sea level rise. This area is the second most vulnerable in the nation after Louisiana. So what does that do? If we're able to get ODU and William & Mary designated as centers of excellency of those things, you're talking about R&D money, you're talking about potential economic clusters of businesses that start to deal with resilience around here, around the coast of the nation, and then potentially export it around the world. So I don't like to just talk about it and say, you know, I like to do things. So we've done those things. One last thing. How many of you guys remember the Ashanti Billy case? Anyone? So Ashanti Billy was a young African-American girl who was abducted off the base on Little Creek Base. One year ago, in a couple weeks, I started getting these text messages, and they said, Scott, will you meet with this family? And I was leaving for DC the next morning. I said, they'll meet with me early? Sure, I'll meet with them. So I meet with them early, and when I met with this family, this was about a week and a half into the time that she was abducted. And after talking to them, you know, their concerns, they weren't getting talked to, and there was FBI and NCIS and Virginia Beach and Norfolk Police, and it was kind of like no one was really taking the lead. And I knew in my heart, in my gut, that they were going to get some bad news. So I stopped what I was doing. We canceled our flights to DC. We started calling people, the police, the FBI. The FBI took over the investigation, and unfortunately, they found Ashanti's body in North Carolina not too long after that. So then we wanted to do something. We wanted to, how could we prevent something like this from happening? Ashanti was 19 years old. You guys familiar with the Amber Alert? Right, 18 years and under. It basically brings resources to bear, telecommunications, broadcast, our social media, to help find children, right? Ashanti was 19. There's an Amber Alert, 18 below. There's a Silver Alert, 65 and up. There's nothing for adults. Nothing. Now clearly, we got to be careful with people's liberty because some adults don't want to be found, right? Some of y'all, but the reality is there's nothing there. And just 2 weeks ago, Virginia Beach police were asking for help from a lady who was 50, or I think she was 50, 51 or something like that, because they were worried about her safety. And they were asking for our help in the public. So we worked on this for a year to get an Ashanti alert that allowed for flexibility with investigating law enforcement agencies if they felt necessary. If someone was taken against their will, or they had mental health issues, or they feared for their self-safety, that they could issue an Ashanti alert. So the Ashanti Alert Act, I'm proud to tell you, after we had to, it was, like I said, legislating is tough. You have to figure out subcommittees, you know, all this offset money. It's like, it's not easy. I'm proud to tell you that 1 year ago, to the day that family came to ask for help, we passed the Ashanti Alert Act through the House of Representatives. And right now, we're trying to get a Senate champion, because there's something that's called, on the Senate, that if the Senate would introduce a companion bill and do what's called a hotline. Essentially, it's a unanimous consent. Like no one can disagree. If someone disagrees, it doesn't go through. But if we can get to the Senate that way, it goes right to the president's desk, and we can start saving lives immediately. So I'm looking for the champion. A couple senators have reached out to me, but we want to make sure that they'll do it quickly, and that they'll actually champion it. Not just get the credit, but they'll actually get it done, and that's our goal. All right, I know I'm rambling. Who's got questions? Yes, ma'am, you're the fastest.
You talked about putting Social Security in a lockbox,
Yes,
and then you said that entitlement program
Sure.
prepared, and that's what you want to work on. What specifically are you referring to?
So it's definitely Medicare and Social Security. There's no question there. All the mandatory spending. So anytime there's mandatory spending, and Congress doesn't have to actually look at it and do tough things, they're not going to. Which is why it doesn't matter who's in power, or it doesn't matter who has been in power, and they know that trajectory of entitlements is unsustainable in the long run. I'm not talking about the next 10 years or something. I'm talking about in the long run. They know that, but no one makes a tough decision because it's just mandatory. They're like, oh, let's leave it. So I'm not telling you that I have the specific answer that's going to change all of our ills. I'm telling you that it will be my generation that will have to do something about it.
Right.
We will have to show leadership.
So you're saying Social Security is not considering that an entitlement, but you're considering that an entitlement?
So, not as a Medicare. Social Security to me is it's our money. It's our money, right? It's our money. But the more you increase it and increase the eligibility in it, smaller pot is. So I think you have to look at what the eligibility is long-term. You have to look at the age. We're living longer. My generation, we're living longer. You have to be, those things have to be on the table to look at. I'm not giving you a definitive, this is going to cure it, because that would be disingenuous. But I know, and I think everyone, trust me, everyone in Congress knows that it has to be tweaked. They all, Democrats and Republicans, they all know. They all get the briefings. They all see the CBO stuff. They all know it has to. It's just no one has the courage to do it.
How's the lockbox work that you're proposing?
Any monies that, it's very simple. Any monies that would come into Social Security stay in that fund. And they can't, so just like the lottery fund in Virginia, like we're like,
what's
trying to
an
get a lockbox
investment?
here, right? So the politicians, on either side, can't touch it to pay for other things.
What would it be invested in?
I'm sorry?
What would you invest it in?
No, I mean, it would stay to pay out Social Security payments.
Yes, it's
I would
not-
invest in anything. It would stay in Social Security. That's my point. You understand what I'm saying? Money that you pay and we pay in for Social Security would only be used for the Social Security Trust Fund.
I get
It wouldn't
that.
be used for anything else.
I get that,
Yeah.
but it's just going to sit there in a drawer?
Well, I imagine sort of they and I don't run the Social Security Trust Fund. I imagine they have investments or in annuities. I don't know how exactly how to do
They
it.
don't do annuities, there's nothing.
So I'm not, like I said, I don't, that's
It
not
only
even
goes to
close
the-
to being in my purview. I
Okay.
don't know exactly how to do it.
Well, it all goes to treasuries. So
Okay.
basically, you're taking it from one pocket, loaning it back to the government, and they have to make the payments out of current cash flow. It's not really invested because once you put it through the treasury, it's now general purpose funds.
No, sir, that's correct, all right? General discretionary monies are voted on appropriation. So security is in a trust fund, and part of the issue is that Congress in the past has rated the trust fund to use it for general purposes. So that's the main difference.
So my goal would be not to allow Congress to rate it. I'm not going to like manage it. That's not even close to the end of my purview or understanding how we're going to invest it. But my goal would be to not allow politicians to raise our money. That's the goal. Yes.
Many of us, the other night, watched the televised debate between Cory Stewart and Tim Kaine. My understanding is that there are only two debates between yourself and Rick. But there are two that luncheon, dinner events that you have to pay for. Is there a third, or what is the third, and is there a televised debate that?
So there's a Chesapeake Bay Forum. I guess it's moderated by Quentin Kidd. And excuse me for the dates. I couldn't tell you what's going on 2 days from now.
15th.
It's the next week. That's the first one, and then you have the chamber, and you have the CBD, Central Business District. The only other one that was even in question was a WHR one that you're not going to either. Like it's on radio, right? However, they're invited to come to any of those events and broadcast it if they want to, or even tape it and broadcast it, so you would be able to hear it just like you would if they did it in the first place. Yes. That's the only. They're the only ones that. I'm sorry. They're the only ones that I'm aware of that reached out to us that want to. That I'm aware of. So, but I like debating. I like it. I like debating. Yeah.
I spent 30 years in federal budgeting with the U.S. government.
So you're like way smarter than I am. No problem.
INS and the Department of Homeland Security. Could you educate the audience a little bit the difference between an authorization and an appropriation, and why it's important for a freshman congressman to be on the appropriation, and what it means for jobs, and other benefits for this local area?
It's a great question. As I said, legislation is really tough. 2% of bills get introduced, which are a ton of them, get passed into law. Appropriations is going through, right? It's going through. So there are 12 bills that fund the government. Authorization, you might say, okay, it's House Armed Services, you might authorize, we're going to build 3 subs, and that's nice. But then you got to go to appropriations to get the money, right? So it's the money. And one of the things that's very important, and we've been very successful for this area. And like I said, I didn't say this. We've helped to bring hundreds of millions of dollars to this area in the past 2 years. Hundreds of millions of dollars in military construction and stuff like that. And there's also that, like the base access roads language that I told you about that specifically helps us protect our base assets in this area. if I tried to do that in legislation, it would be very tough, if at all, that I could do it. But because I'm on appropriations, I can put that language right in the appropriations bill, and it goes through, because you're gonna fund the government eventually. So you can do things on appropriations that it's very difficult to, or you can't do legislatively speaking. So it is very important. It is very, and I was also, not only was I'm the only freshman ever from Virginia to be on appropriations, I was appointed as a conferee this year. So what happens is that the House, they pass all their funding for whatever the bill is. Let's say it's military construction, Veterans Affairs, whatever their numbers are that they're putting there, and then the Senate passes theirs, and as you can imagine, they're a little different. So then you go on what's called a conference, and the conferees are the last people there before it goes to the president's desk. They're the ones that are fighting for the last bit as the Senate's trying to take some of your stuff out or whatever and stuff like that. So as a conferee, I'm the best position to be able to make sure that federal dollars stay here or protect our bases and stuff like that. So appropriations, it's kind of inside baseball stuff because it's all like political stuff, but it's very, very important. It's a very important. Yes?
Thanks for coming, Congressman. I work over at NASA Langley Research Center, and you have...
You guys got someone on it here too. NASA, I will tell you, that agency has been in my office probably more than any agency. You guys are diligent. I mean, you guys are, you come at it, I like it.
So yeah, that was kind of the basis of my question. You have two critical NASA facilities in your district. Are you part of the Science and Technology Committee, or do you have any influence on that to advance our mission in space?
Great question. So, number one, I'm very bullish on space. And so is the administrator, right? So is the administrator. I think there's a lot of potential. Right here in this district, we launched rockets from my district. It's fantastic, right? NASA Wallace, NASA Langley. We're helping with the budget there. We have to get our hypersonic missiles on par with other China, Russia, all that stuff like that. These guys are extremely important, not just for our military and defense sector, but for commercial people too, for aeronautics and stuff like that. So one of the things, because I'm not on the Science and Tech Committee, but because I'm on appropriations, and I knew that because I'm on appropriations, I can be influential in the authorization of things. So for example, you have authorizers, right? They're authorizing things that are happening in NASA, but they need money. Right? And that's what I'm strong at, is building relationships. So I build relationships because when they come and ask me for money, I'm like, that's cool, but I'm going to work on this stuff. So yes, the answer is I can absolutely be influential. And then I'll even say one thing I didn't mention, back to your question and your question. So NASA Wallace, right? We have a small naval contingent. We have NOAA up there. We got NASA up there, Coast Guard. And the not Hampton Roads, but Virginia lost out on what's called the Trident UAV program. It went to Florida. So it was going to be a lot of jobs and a lot of economic activity, but the Navy went to Florida instead of here. And the reason why they did that was because there was daycare, things for families in Florida based that there wasn't up in Wallace. There was a housing shortage, daycare shortage. And the reality is I've gotten every mayor, I've gotten probably 75% of the mayors in one room up on the Eastern Shore. And if you understand the Eastern Shore is tough to do, you might be a mayor of 500, you might be a mayor of 30, you might be 75, and they have their own fiefdoms, right? And they don't work together. The reality is if I'm going to be impactful for them, I need them to all be together for things like sewer and broadband and stuff like that. But also to stress to them that we're trying to bring more assets here. We're trying to beef up NASA. We're trying to bring more UAVs and space commercial use and DOT. But they have to create the zoning laws and things like that to allow for DOT assets to come here. So we were able to pass language in appropriations too. There are empty buildings for public-private partnerships, so that the DOT agencies that don't normally work together, that they can all work together in this for daycare, which sounds like maybe not a good thing, but that's what the military looks at when they're moving assets. They need that stuff to be there. So we actually were able to get that done through appropriations too, very quickly. Norfolk, we're in Norfolk. So this is more to your question too. But I'm very bullish on it, very bullish, and you guys do a fantastic job of orienting me. Because listen, one of the strengths and weaknesses of a legislative body, a diverse legislative body, is we all have different backgrounds, right? If you started asking me veterinarian questions, I couldn't tell you anything. I have no idea, right? But there's probably a vet in Congress, right? But back more to what you were saying, and like I said, I'm super fortunate. So Norfolk, the mayor King Alexander in Norfolk, for 6 years, 6 years. They've been trying to, there's a customs office in downtown Norfolk, you guys are probably familiar with, where the main is, between the main and Waterside. And they're trying to create a walkway there. 6 years they've been trying to do that. Trying to move up 2 parking spaces. 2 parking spaces with customs. They're like, we'll give you free parking. You just need those spaces so we can create this, this nice pretty walkway. And they've been doing it. In a week and a half, in appropriations, we got it done. In a week and a half. Call the mayor up. Guess what I got for you? No. Yes.
That's perfect segue into my question. So my name is Kathleen Rogers, and my husband is 21 years active duty Navy, and we are stationed here at Little Creek. So my question is about HR 282. So it probably doesn't reflect to any other people in this room, but for military spouses who have active duty service members who met their spouses a moment after we moved out of our home state, this is a huge deal to us.
Can you fill me in what that is?
Yeah, HR 282, you've changed the number a couple of times in the Senate, Congress, at your committee. So it is the military spouse residency bill, and you've had it since last year on your table, sir. And so what it is that I met my husband moments after he left his home state, and I have a different home state. It's Massachusetts, and the Patriots are playing, so I'm going to speed this up. So in other words, what it is that my husband is Washington State,
Sure.
and I'm Massachusetts, and we met moments after we both left our states. He can maintain his residency. Massachusetts gratefully has allowed me to maintain my residency for the many years that he's been serving for the United States Navy. The downside is that I have to pay taxes every time we move. And just so you know, my husband's Special Forces, we move every 2 years. So if you can imagine how much that is, I'm professional, I have a job, I don't have children.
Can you explain what you mean when you're paying taxes?
So I pay taxes in whatever state that we reside in. So right now I reside in Commonwealth of Virginia, so I pay Commonwealth of Virginia taxes. My husband doesn't pay any taxes because he is a resident of Washington State.
Sure.
The bill says if we met within X amount of time of when we got married, that I could have claimed his state as my residency, and I wouldn't have to pay any state taxes.
Can you,
Whatever
whose
Commonwealth
bill is
is
that?
it.
You said it's on my desk?
Yeah, it's HR 282. It's been in your desk since February of 2017.
So I'm just not familiar with it. So do you know whose bill it is?
No, I don't, but I can.
But let me write down what it is. So I'm just not familiar with it.
And I know it's a small thing and it's petty, and for every one of you who live here, and it's just petty, but when you move every 2 years, it's
No, it sounds like something I would support. But what's HR what?
HR 282.
282.
It's the spouse residency program. And I go for everything in this room, and everybody's talking about Medicare and Medicaid and everything, like, I'm going through the same things that everybody in this room is, it's just those small things. To all of us here who pay our taxes and do these things, these small moments matter.
So what I'll tell you is, and this is important for everybody, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm not familiar with it, but I'll look at it. And as you can imagine, there are thousands of bills, and it's not on my committee. It's not appropriations bill. That's a Veterans Affairs thing. So it would start.
Yeah, it is on the Veterans Affairs Committee that you oversee.
No, I don't oversee that. So I'm not on the authorization, right? I'm on the appropriation. So I'm just the money over Veterans
So
Affairs.
when we look it up online, it actually says that you're one of the people that's holding it up, which is why I asked the question. But again, it's your name. It's your name on this list probably this big, right? Congressman, there's probably multiple people that are part of this decision process.
I want to be clear because I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. I'm not holding anything up. And I don't know what it is. I'll look at it, see which bill it is, because I'm just not familiar with it. But as you can imagine, there are thousands of bills that come to different committees, and I won't see it necessarily. Because I oversee Veterans Affairs budget and the money. The Veterans Affairs Committee, the Authorization Committee, is who would have that. So I don't have it.
And you're on the list, which is why I'm asking the question.
But I don't know what list you mean. I don't understand what you're saying.
So if you look up HR 282. And
Does that mean I'm a sponsor of it? Like I'm already a sponsor?
No, it just says you haven't approved it. So,
That I'm on a target list to support it? That may be true. I just haven't seen it yet.
and that's okay, and that's okay. And
But
and
let me be clear.
by the way, everybody in this room probably has something that they want to
But
support.
let me be clear. I'm not holding it up. The Veterans,
Oh, I didn't say you were,
The
sir.
Veterans Affairs Committee can move forward with it without me, right? So I'm not holding it up. I want to make
No,
it very clear.
and I agree with you,
Yeah.
but Also, the thing is that you also
In fact,
say on your
if-
website, if you email you, you'll respond, and I got a generated response that was extremely derogative 4.5 weeks later, as did my husband.
Can we move on, please?
Yeah.
Please.
I'm happy to see that. I don't think
Wow.
We all pay taxes.
We all pay taxes as well.
You've had your time, sit down. Hey,
Actually, no, I'm not going to sit down.
hold on a second, listen.
Wait a minute, my husband has served for 21 years active duty, and many of you have. But number two is, are you fucking kidding me?
Oh, man. Listen.
I'm sorry, but we're at a Civic League meeting, and we are
Are
at
you
a time
fucking
constraint.
kidding me?
We are at a time constraint. You have one more question.
Just because we all have different beliefs and strengths and things, are you kidding
One
me?
more question if you'd like.
I do.
We need to, because
I'll
I
think
mean,
of more. I will say, and I'm happy to look into the bill, I just haven't seen it yet. Every committee gets their bill, and because one congressman's not on it, that has nothing to do with if they mark it up or not. I'm not on the committee, I would not. They can mark it up and send it to the floor, and I wouldn't see it at all until I vote on it, right? So that's just the way it works. But I'm happy to look at it and see if it's something. Yes, sir.
But your staff is actually trying to help a friend of mine. He is a Vietnam vet, Bronze Star, 13-year old, very bad Alzheimer's and dementia, has no money, and there's no veterans, no VA home or any place that, for someone like him with dementia and Alzheimer's. And it was like your staff's working on it, but they're working to help him in some way, but it might be something that you could look at and see why there's no facility for people like that.
I beg to differ with you. I lived in Decatur, Georgia, and my husband had dementia, and I applied and they were taken. Decatur, Georgia.
Well, okay, I've been working on this for 6 months, and the local VA people here say there is no facility. I will certainly look into it.
so I'll let you two get together.
Hang on.
I'll let you two get together, that'll be
Yes,
great.
stop. I gotta take one more, and I gotta go, sorry.
Pick whatever
She's gonna keep my butt.
pick whatever we want, but I want to hear your thoughts on healthcare, and then I know if you want to publicly respond to the fraud in your account.
Yeah, I'll do both because I have time. Let's take the second one first, right? I didn't know anything about any wrongdoing from anyone on my campaign until I found out. As soon as we did, I fired senior staff. The folks that were, so we took action immediately, period, right? So I know that there's all kinds of stuff and we're in the season. So they're gonna say whatever they want to, they're gonna put whatever they want on there on TV, there's a tracker right there, they'll put stuff. But that's it. I'm not, they'll say that I'm gonna investigate, I'm not getting investigated. That's all BS, right? This is the season. Healthcare, let's talk about healthcare. Two things. Number one, it's no secret that I'm not a fan of Obamacare. I'm just not. I think it's too expensive. Affordable Care Act. So I think it's too expensive. It hurts working families. I know, the majority of people in this district are having their healthcare premiums skyrocket. It has good things in it. No, I don't disagree with that. But I'm going to tell you. But creating this big bureaucracy and monstrosity just makes it more expensive. One of the things that what I will tell you is it's way more expensive. But and Medicare was rated $700 billion we can afford it. One of the things I'm not hearing from either side is disruption in healthcare and transparency in healthcare. If you need to get a hip replacement, and these are all the doctors, you should know how much she costs, how much she costs, how much she costs, and if they're any good or not. It's hard to find that right now. Why? That's crazy. So we have to have transparency in there. We have to allow for bureaucracy to get disrupted. So if you're, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat previously, if you're a Democrat, you say insurance companies are evil, but you fight to give them free taxpayer dollars to keep them in the system. If you're a Republican, you say you want more free market, but you allow for hospitals and insurance companies to have more influence on the bill, which is top down, right? How many of you guys have taken Uber before?
Yes.
Right? Before you had Uber, the taxis, over 100-year business model, top down monopoly. You call here, might get here in 45 minutes. You don't know who's coming to get you. It might stink in the car. You know what I mean? Now you have Uber. They, how much it costs. You know who's coming to get you. They got water bottles and iPhone chargers, and it's cheaper because you've introduced more competition and you've made it more bottom up, right? So you don't have that in healthcare now. I think you have to. Right now, you can get a 30-second medical grade EKG on your smartphone. Why isn't that in the system? Why aren't we monitoring people with diabetes and chronic care with their vitals with smartphones and then doing a quick telemedicine thing when we see them. Why? Why are we not doing those things? All that technology is here, right? If you have tires, right, in your car, and let's say you got 15,000-mile tires, right? And I don't have a medical background, but it's just common sense. If you both have 15,000-mile tires, but he drives on ragged roads and he drives fast and you're on smooth roads and you drive slow, his is going to run out first, right? My body's going to wear down faster than yours because I'm probably beating it a lot harder. Right now, technology's there right now to have sensors, just like with tires, to figure all that stuff out. Why aren't we doing that stuff? So quite frankly, I think if you're not talking about those things, and disruption in healthcare, or you're talking about transparency, and you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're wrong. That's what needs to happen. So that's where I'm at. Sorry, I gotta go.
Thank you very, very much for coming. Okay, I have a few more things, and then I promise to get to 11 at 4 minutes. Deborah Lutz is here, and I know she has a few things to say about the Fall Festival.